I cried for the whole week, Thabang.
Mm.
Like I was even drained from crying because I looked back and it was absolutely inspiring, amazing. I looked from, reflected from actually taking into account that I struggled to get into M clean, and I also like reflecting back into the journey
Yeah.
on how it unfolded. And I was like, "Who? I'm inspired."
From across the various media platforms. Welcome to a meaningful conversation. In the red corner, introducing one who knows what it is to wear a red gown, a professional record of an undergrad degree, an honors degree, a master's degree, a PhD, rising from the Garden of Eden from a little town called Mahwelering, a daughter, a sister, a lecturer, a practitioner. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing Dr. Koketjo Tsebe. Have you ever been introduced like that before? So
No.
I thought we should go with the whole, because you're into sports, I know that you're an award-winning clinical psychologist, a member of SASCOC. You're the psychologist for softball South Africa, softball, or is it softball South Africa?
Yes,
Currently
of South
pursuing,
Africa.
currently pursuing an MBA or completing.
Pursuing.
And one day wishing or hoping to be pursuing to be a professor. And I know that you are one of the 200 million Guardian influencers in 2021. Quite an accomplished person. Thank you for the opportunity to chat to you today.
Thank you so much for the invitation, Thabang. I'm looking forward to our interaction.
Yes, how are you feeling today? Let's just start there.
I'm feeling quite relaxed. I'm on leave rather. I took a vacation leave from work for 2 weeks.
Ah,
So
that's
I'm
good.
quite chilled.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
good. So
And
you
how
can.
are you?
I'm all right. I'm all right. It's nice that you can take vacation work, in the middle of a pandemic. But people like you who work very hard are supposed to. I mean, you're juggling a lot. I know you work with master students and you lecture. I think you've got quite a lot on your plate. So I appreciate the time. Um,
Okay.
you're all over, by the way. See, in a good way. I see you're doing a lot of interviews and a lot of media, a lot of work, and maybe I can just start there. Um, how has your life changed, since completing your PhD, and what's that like? And going into sports psychology, what's that like?
Okay. Thanks, Thabang. It has been fulfilling ever since I received my results. It's been fulfilling.
Mm.
And also, but there's also pressure on the other side because you're a doctor. People feel like they expect you to say something. But I've never really fell into the trap to become extraordinary because
Yeah.
I'm a doctor. I just become myself. If I have to say things in a simplistic form, I would say that.
Mm.
But also, I think now that you mentioned that I'm into sports psychology, so my topic was around there. It's the subcategory of sports psychology. There's a level of interest to want to know because remember, this is a path that I established as an expert, as you know, in the HPCSA. Sports psychology is not a recognized category. So it's for me, it is a journey that I somehow embarked on as a way to become competent, knowledgeable, so that I can, as a researcher and an academic, I can be quite informed so that I can put that into practice.
Yeah, and I think people don't are not really aware of that, and I think it's some of the things I'd like to get into to talk about, because I think people aren't aware of the journey. When I remember, I think when I was doing my honors or my masters, my parents would say, "Khalilal fetchane," "Kar school has failed," you're always going to school, and you're just going, you're not completing. Maybe just the journey for somebody who doesn't understand actually what you've done, because you've done something quite remarkable. I think you are pioneering. You know, maybe tell the story of um, maybe started you were doing you first. How did you get into psychology, and why did you now go into the sports aspect of it, and then up until you did a doctorate and all that.
All right, Thabang. My passion or my interest into picking a specialty of sports psychology was primarily influenced by my upbringing. Growing up in Maholoring, playing sports, mainly softball for Maholoring Spikes, and sports was very close to my heart. Like, I think between school and sports, both of them. So if I'm not focused on schoolwork, I'm at school, I'm in the grounds. So I enjoyed juggling both responsibilities. So in high school, I discovered about a discipline of sports psychology, and I said, this is what I want. But you know, the journey was not an easy one, because I went to TEFLOP to enroll for a BA degree. You know, when you do a BA degree, it's like you don't have a direction, it's
What
a
are you doing? You're not
generalized.
sure, you know, yeah.
Yes, that sense of your own show. So, and then you're doing it, they tell you that you must measure to honors, and then after you must do clinical, and they only take 10 students, and you're wondering, will I make it? But within me, because I've always believed in myself, I said, I will make it, they will choose me. So I completed my undergrad, went to honors, volunteered in student counseling center. I was a mentor. I was also a peer educator, because you're into psychology, also wanted to sharpen my skills. And because I also believe that there's always something to work on ourselves. So that exposure also assisted me. But on the other side, I was still playing softball for the university team. And I completed my honors. During honors, I applied for a clinical at TEFLOP, and I wasn't taken.
Yeah,
And that was, I
no,
remember it
that's a
was,
rough time, man. It's the first time you see people cry, and you're like, oh, what's this thing that you know that makes grown men and women cry, you know?
yes, because it's a missed opportunity. I took it hard, I must say, but I got support from family. I remember in the same year, I went to selections at UKZ and Howard. I wasn't taken either. Then it means next year I must just plan my life. What am I going to do? I registered for a research master's. I registered at that TEFLOP, and then in the same year, I applied again at TEF. I wasn't taken. I applied at Fakomakato, still didn't make it. And then, you know, but I still carried through, and my parents promised me that, no, we'll be with you. Every year it's time to apply at different universities. Some shortlist you, some don't. But okay, by the grace of the Lord, 2013, I applied again at TEF for the third time. They invited me to, I always made it to selections, but I just didn't get my things right. And then finally I got in at TEFLOP, third attempt, got in. That was a breakthrough. That was a celebration for myself, family and friends, those who really know that, who knew that I want to become part of this program. Fortunately enough, the research was converted. Then I was accredited when I was doing MA Clean. So I was at least ahead with research, studied at TEFLOP, but I knew that I want to be in academia and specialize in sports. I held that at the back of my mind. I'm like, okay, let me do my internship, let me do ComServe, and then this is where I want to be. So when I was doing my ComServe, that's when I registered for a PhD with University of Fort Hare. I also struggled to get a supervisor, I must say. But here's the thing, Thabang, while I'm speaking with you, I remember there's one individual I spoke with at the beginning of a BA degree, and when I started a PhD, it's Mr. Gawela. Yeah, I think I'm pronouncing it correctly. Gawela is one of the psychologists who's into sport in Cape Town. So when I was doing first year BA, I contacted him to say, I want to become a sports psychologist. You're eager, you don't know. And he's like, no, you'll have to study, do clinical or counseling, and then now you can direct your specialty. So I went back to him. I said, we spoke so many years ago, and I'm struggling to get a supervisor. Please recommend, because I had exhausted supervisors in Gauteng and Limpopo. Then he recommended Prof. Leon van Niekerk for her. And then, yeah, so I was able to do that. I actually, last year, actually contacted him to say thanks. I spoke to you in the most important phases of my life, and you really advised me. Yeah, so that was the journey.
Beautiful story, you know. I mean, just there with your story, like even you just reminded me of something. The first time I saw you, um, was I think I'd seen you on Facebook, or you know, I don't know where. And but I was so excited. I don't know why. Now when you talk something, I remembered something. Before I studied, I actually my plan was to become a sports psychologist, and my plan was I was going to study sports psychology, and I was gonna open a gym, and then you know I was gonna, because I was into athletics and stuff. And so when you you know relate your journey, maybe I think that's why I was so drawn to you. I was like, but what's this about you with the sports psychology thing? But also what's beautiful about your story is this thing about how you know when people get rejected, but they, you know, there's this grit, tenacity that you have, which I suppose if you're into a competitive space, you say you took it hard, but you somehow keep pursuing, keep going, and which says a lot about you. And I think what you've achieved from the rejection, the upsets, not getting into the program, but finally getting into the program, and even just going and doing a PhD, still not, you know, just resting there but continuing. I think it says a lot about you, and it's quite an inspirational story. I do hope that people actually knew this part of your story. Now, earlier you mentioned the part about now that you're a doctor, you know, you're expected to say something interesting. Um, you know, when you're a doctor, it's like, oh, when you speak, oh, is that the doctor? You're supposed to say something very interesting. You said that you manage it, but you don't feel the pressure. But do you feel responsibility in terms of where you are as a woman, as a pioneer, as the person in your space? Do you feel that there are things that you have to do, things you have to pursue, or do you feel you're just going to take it at your own pace and just pursue your dreams? Is there some sort of responsibility on your shoulders?
Okay, Thabang, I think primarily my responsibility is to equip myself with skills, to empower myself. I think that's what I strive for on a daily basis and through different avenues, be it in research, reading, supervising postgraduate students, teaching. It's for me to be able to say, if I were to be asked to render a service about this, I should be able to speak with confidence, with so much knowledge. But also, there's one great words of one of my former supervisor, Christy, once told me that did my internship at 1 mil, you'll never arrive, even if you're an expert. If you find yourself that you've arrived, you're in the wrong foot. So it's, for me, it's a journey that I'm actually passionate about what I'm doing, but also for me to navigate this space is that there's always a room to learn something. Never get to a point where I think I know it all. It's my responsibility to equip myself. And yeah.
Yeah. What I like is can you still hear me? So yeah.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. You know, you're so poised and calm, and I think we underestimate, you know, what you've achieved. Um, but the journey itself, I mean, did you cry? Did you just take it with the ease, the calmness that you have now? Was it rough? And what is it like to start this PhD journey and to complete it? Was it rough, as many people say, or for you it was something that you took with your stride?
Oh, it's a difficult journey, Tava. But I think what assisted me, it's the support I received from my family and supervisor. Actually, I did my PhD when I was going through a very tough time. But because of perseverance, this is what I wanted. My family were always there and friends. And I have to also mention the role that Prof. Leon van Niekerk played. I remember there's a time where I could not get leave. and Prof had to supervise me during the weekend, and he did that. I'll go to Eastern Cape every month end for supervision, and he will make time for me. So, and also the relationship with supervisors are important, because then I would be able to, I was myself, Prof knew me. Sometimes I'll say, Prof, I'm tired. Oh, I'm so tired. Can we pause this? And we had an open, fair relationship with each other. And Prof knew where I want to go. And somehow, because he's an expert in sports, he has done a lot of work across all boards in sports psychology. He was able to tell me relevant things, like to say, now you're there, you're establishing yourself as a sports psychologist expert. This is what you must grow within this field. Tomorrow, we don't want to hear you saying you're in another field. Don't be all over. Become an expert, empower yourself. And also, even after our journey, if you have any question or you need any assistance, you can always come back to me. And guess what? We still work together. We co-supervise master students together, co-write, co-publish together. And so though the journey was, I acknowledge that it was difficult, but I got assistance through the help of both Prof and the family and friends. It was quite fulfilling, because I remember the week I received my results, I cried for the whole week, Thabang. Like I was even drained from crying, because I looked back and it was absolutely inspiring, amazing. I reflected from actually taking into account that I struggled to get into MClean, and I also like reflecting back into the journey on how it unfolded. And I was like, oh, I'm inspired.
And speaking of inspired, you went through, I suppose, the articles, the nights, the tears, the weekends of working, and you get this done, right, with the support and I guess also family as well. And then you get your result. You say you cried and you were drained. And when you were thinking about your graduation, you've got lovely pictures of them. What inspired then the outfit,
Okay, thank you so much for the compliments. Yes, so remember we graduated virtually, but myself and family, yes, did a family photo shoot, black and white, and I had put on the beads that is for Sikhosa. It was inspired by 4 days in Eastern Cape, Monty and Alice. So because I received so much warmth, I also have to acknowledge the warmth I received from there. It actually helped me. I got things easy. You go to the airport, everybody is so lovely. And I could bond and blend with them. And I knew that the day I graduate, if it was still going to be a physical one, I'll still wear a proper Xhosa outfit. So for me, it was like, okay, this is actually for me to appreciate and embrace the Xhosa nation, to say, during the 3 years I studied with you, I really enjoyed interacting with each one of you, and enkosi, thank you.
And then we are Ted.
No, I can hear Xhosa, but I can speak slightly there.
Because I worked in funny enough, when I did my internship, I did my internship at two military hospital.
Oh.
Yeah, I felt some pressure you must learn how to teta, and I never learned, but I felt like there was some expectation for me to learn to teta, And speaking of the people who also, were involved in your journey, now the people with softball South Africa, I mean, how do they feel about you now? Because to me it also seems that somehow you highlight their brand. It's almost as if how when you do well, they get mentioned a little bit, because when we think of those other sports, we call them the minor ones, or not the soccers and the netballs, and but it seems that your progress, I don't know, but according to me, it seems that your progress also helps them somehow. And do they feel proud of you? Are you glad that they allowed you to work with them? And what did you learn when you did work with them?
Oh, Tawan, this one is, it's close to my heart. It's close to my heart, because that's what made to the beginning of my involvement in sports at a practical aspect. I can confidently say they are proud, because I do speak with them, the executive of Softball South Africa. they are proud of what, how far I've reached. I started the journey with them, and it was quite. I was anxious. We are trained into clinical. You're still a psychologist, but we are trained into clinical work. And then there was my first appointment to work in sports. Of course, I had the theoretical and background of it to say, and we also know the aspect of entering into a group or into a space. But here I'm working with a different population. I was anxious on my first task. I went to Botswana with the team. And after that, I got involved with most of senior, all the teams actually, the junior and the senior. And at a later stage, we went to a World Cup in LA. But I have to say, Thabang, that I've received so much support from Softball South Africa. They've given me an opportunity. It's not easy to break into sports psychology, but the entire executive under Mr. Mashilu Matsitela, they gave me a platform, and they did not only give me a platform, they supported me. If I were to come to them and say, please help me with 1, 2, 3, they always come on board to say, we were supporting you. And I suppose also they are proud, because if, like you said, you can't mention Koketjo and not mention Softball South Africa. So it's somehow for me to say thank you for that.
Yeah, because I think, the journey you took with them, I think sometimes when we go and learn, I suppose as researchers, if you're an academic, and sometimes I think people don't get that as much as you go to find out questions, they actually teach you more than they think they do. I know for myself, when I work with people, just in therapy, like the things that I learn, I don't even think people understand what they give me and what they do to me and how it improves my life. You talked about going to Botswana, going to LA, and I wanted to go into how, in South Africa, when we compete internationally, we just had the Olympics now, and I think we came back with one gold medal, one or two, gold medal, and I'm just wondering now, as people in South Africa, people in Africa, just in terms of our mindset and the elite sports people we have in the country, do you, I mean, what stands out for you? Do you think that that where we are we able to compete, and from your observation, are we able to compete with the international crowds mentally, more mentally, or do you think there's something that needs to be adjusted with how we think and how we perform? What's your take on that?
All right, Thabang. Though I want to appreciate the influence of psychological preparation on performance, I would also like to say that, remember, sports performance, it entails a lot of aspects. There's the development structures that influences the next level, that is the professional level. There's the administrative part that also influence on that. There's the physical preparation, the talent, are you fit? And then there comes
Koketjo? Doc?
subjective to say, but they lacked psychological preparation, because we also don't know, we are commenting not knowing where other aspects being covered as well. Were they considered? Are they also on par? Like I said, I also appreciate the influence of psychology, but it's not psychology playing a role alone here in isolation. It fits into other, sub-disciplines of the physical, the administrative, everything that makes up into sports and influence performance. But I would also advocate or encourage for the involvement of psychology in sports preparation.
Yeah, so maybe to break it a bit down further, because my concern is, when I look at people who achieve and people who do great, who achieve great feats in terms of sports and things like that, I see that, they almost start as children. there's almost like a pipeline. You start, you're 3, you're 4, and you are being trained. There's not just the finances, somebody supporting you. There is, you talk about the administration, like it's a whole team having to get involved in the development of one individual or a team, so that by the time you are late teens, early adulthood, you can perform on the whole stage. And I suppose the mental aspect, I certainly think we do not lack the talent, but I do wonder about how anxious we become, or some of our athletes, in terms of how they see themselves, how they handle being on a big stage. Do you think then, with what you've seen with the softball, with just your research, um, do you think there's something different about us, or something that we are missing perhaps?
Okay, Thabang, I think psychology, it's usually perceived as a form of crisis management. We bring it when there's a crisis, or it's just one of those. It's not in the forefront as part of preparation, because remember, before we go to a competition, there's a thorough preparation that takes place. And that's when the psychology, also discipline, has to be involved. So I think that will always be a missing point, especially if they're not fully involved, as part of the team. So there's an element of psychology, lack of it, then influencing on the overall outcome, because you spoke about important variables like managing anxiety, which we can never take anxiety out of being in a competitive space. And that's actually a greatest influence of how one will be able to compete, will be able to approach competition, and also how they'll have an outlook on the entire competition, on themselves. Because remember, you can't take the competition aside and not themselves. So they are also human beings who are also impacted by participating in the competition. And there's a lot of things to manage also, in addition to anxiety, the pressure, other dynamics that could influence, if it's in team sports, the team cohesion, the type of leadership, and all of this, they follow into the psychological spectrum. These are attributes that psychologists could be able to work on, or rather assist athletes and coaches to work on as part of the competition preparation.
Do you have any views regarding women in sports? I think it's a big thing. Maybe we can start with what happened in the Olympics. Simone Biles, the American gymnast. She was supposed to perform, and then she said, she wasn't feeling her best, and she wasn't, when she was doing her flips, she couldn't land the way she wanted to land. There's that issue. There's the issue with I suppose the payment, what happens with the payments, and in terms of when men compete, when women compete. Do you have any views, just as either professional or as somebody just watching the space, women in sports and payments and all that?
Thabang, the issue of inequality, especially in sports, it's one of the critical debates that I also have views about, that it's important for all genders to receive equal pay. And just also to follow up, you spoke about Simone withdrawing also. We need also to appreciate and understand the space she's coming from, especially because we're dealing with a sensitive topic of mental health. But overall, my views about women in sports is that they must get fair opportunities, be it in competition, in financial reimbursement. There must be fair and equal opportunities.
But Doc, if I can be a bit controversial, I hope it's okay. But I mean, we're talking about sports here. We compete. We're supposed to. We compete here, and if you can't compete, some people will say that. Not that that's what I think, but I'm just saying there are people who would say, but when it comes to sports, I mean, it's a competitive space. Can you really? Maybe the people can have like an equal opportunity but we don't know about, if it's equal outcome in terms of how much people can earn the same. Even the men, when they play together, I saw something the other time. They said Messi, I think, will earn about 35 million euros, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And some of these teammates don't earn as much as that, So could we ever get to a point like that where people earn the same, or do we say this is sports, survival of the fittest, and including anxiety? So you're just supposed to suck it up and compete because you are an elite athlete. You are being paid the money. You must perform. What would you say to people who would say things like that?
Okay, they would be mentioning valid points, especially you gave a case of an example about Messi. But remember here, we're speaking about individual accolades and extraordinary talent that the team, whoever that buys, when they buy him, it's in the interest of what he has achieved. So here it's more at an individual level. I don't see any necessarily primarily influence of gender, but we see what he has done. But in an open competition where we know that, okay, there's so-and-so tournament, this is how much they pay for a male team, equally the approach should be the same. Because now here we're speaking about team or individual performance. But where sports is part of business, it's outside that. And that's where it also needs to be challenged. I'm not sure if you get what I'm trying to drive home.
So you're making the distinction between people performing as individuals, but where things are standardized. For example, say maybe a cup competition. If we say the winning team gets so much, and if the men get this much, we can't say now the women must get something different. It should be fair, unless you are doing something very extraordinary. You stand out amongst your peers, and therefore maybe with endorsements and things like that. And I don't know if you also have a view with Naomi Osaka, because I watched a documentary on Netflix the other time. I don't know if you've seen it.
Not yet.
Yeah, well, I think it's a 3-part series. There's a part where, she wins and then she struggles with her mental health and just maintaining. So the talent is there. I think she admits that I can do it, but somehow I just struggle to maintain that level to win the competitions, And so I thought it's an interesting thing to look at as the mental health professionals. She performs, she's got the ability, but somehow when she's supposed to show up, she's been struggling to see herself as the champ, as somebody who can do it, to maintain her successes in a consistent. I thought it was an interesting thing. Maybe if you have a look one day, we'll chat about it.
All right, no thanks.
When people interview you, are there things you feel they forget to ask you? Are there things that you wish people talk to you about?
No.
You don't leave interviews saying,
think.
no, but they didn't ask me. I want to talk about this 1, 2, 3, and
Remember, Thabang, they will be influenced by a certain topic. If they say, okay, we want to speak about this, the recent case, so we'd know we'd be speaking precisely about. But if it's a profile, then it will be specifically about it. But I can't think of any interview where I felt that they could have asked me about this. No.
So I suppose I'm also asking you, are there things that you like talking about that people don't know? Things close to your heart that you're passionate about, but because I know when you do media, they've got this slot and they've got these questions and you must answer them, and you don't really get to express yourself and share your views and your ideas. Are there things that you wish you had space to talk about or think about or explore?
Oh yes, Thabang. Now that you're speaking about it, it triggers one goal I had when I was still at TEF. I always, it's still at the back of my mind to have a scholarship where I find women. I said women, a scholarship. At least if I can start with one, then we'll start from there. Yeah, that's some of the things that I planned. One of the goals, yes, when I was still in university, something that I still want to fulfill to have a scholarship program that funds women. So I would wish to one day to be able to start with one candidate, take to varsity, and it grows from there.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I'm doing actually at Thabang, that's also never get to be asked. I do a lot of community work where I offer psychological services pro bono to NGOs. Some, they wouldn't be registered NGOs, but it will be talks. You know, sometimes people think when you're doing a talk, you're getting paid. Sometimes it's not even a paying gig. They've asked, they have a beautiful concept, and it's like, okay, fine, I'll be part of it. So yeah, some of the projects that I do as part of giving back to the community.
Yeah, and maybe to your first point, you know, when you talk about the scholarship for women, do you feel that women are getting a raw deal in terms of what's happening in South Africa, in academia, and you as a professional? Do you feel that you're a woman? I mean, do people treat you in a way that you feel, we need to fix some things? Or how come your interest in girls, women in particular?
I think I will share my views based on my views then, the experience of when I still had this idea. Of course, I still kept it as women exclusively. Because as a young woman, I always believe that I can be able to achieve anything. And then seeing in the society, I always could see that women, there was also inequality. Women were not really that empowered back then. But I think in the past years, we've seen some growth. I don't want to arrange it, but we've seen some growth in the involvement of women in different structures. I would like to add into that progress that I'm mentioning about, to say, let's empower more women to be able to pursue academic studies that is that of their interest, and then they will take it from there. So just to add on what has been laid, the foundation that has been laid.
Yeah, okay, no, fair enough. And you say, you know, then you work with the community and you know, you do talks pro bono, you give therapy. And one of the things we can't talk about is this thing of being black. Well, one thing we can't ignore, being black in psychology and being a psychologist in mental health, you know. I know somebody, I won't mention their name, but it's an elderly person that I know, and she would say, "Hey, but how much you know, people people are soft. You know, they make up stuff. Is mental health really real in some of the communities that you work in? Do you think that you psychologists take it seriously? Do people appreciate it, or is it something nice to have?
With the communities that I've worked with, I think there is some sense of awareness on issues of mental health, that there's just that, I don't want to term it resistance. There's just not that inability to actually go and approach professionals, either due to fears of being vulnerable, or others will say they are not far, the lack of information, where to go, who to consult. You know, there will be that edge to say, but I need to talk to someone. But that entry point to the administrative part, or the first stage of saying, okay, book me, I want to see, there's always issues around there. But I think through interacting with them, I've seen on how it enlightened others to know, okay, fine, this is the route we can take. And this is what actually therapy, what is the process about? Because we know, you know, as psychologists, we also have to encourage to see psychologists. So for me, I've always also said, we also go for therapy, because it assists with personal and professional development.
Maybe two more questions, Doc. Thank you for indulging me with your time. You know, um, the thing that I've also been thinking about is, so you spoke about women, you spoke about the communities you work in, but there's this thing with psychology and being black, and black Africa, mental health. do you have views about that? Do you feel that psychology in its current form, I suppose we can go into different aspects. Are we talking neuro? Are we talking cognitive? Are we talking, but do you feel the way psychology is packaged, delivered, taught, caters to where we are? Or should we continue the way it is, or should we add some African perspectives or lead from there? I don't know. What's your take on that?
My take is that we need to, and what my take, Thabang, is primarily directly linked to what my employer advocate for, UNISA, to decolonize the content, also which include also psychology modules. And while we decolonize the curriculum, it's also our responsibilities as academics and practitioners to also approach or render services in a way that is quite universal. It's not focused on one, rigidly in that sense, to be able to become flexible and open to cases as they come. I do understand that how curriculum, the teaching aspect plays a role, because that's where the training of psychologists start. The very same psychologists who are going to render services to the rest of the community. So there's a need to decolonize.
Yeah, and I suppose they say pastors. Not that I'm a pastor. They have closings. They close 3 times, 4 times. So I'm closing with this comment, but I've got one more. So you being young, strong, black person doing what you want to do, do you find that the world has changed, like in terms of how people respond to you? Do people find you intimidating, or do you feel that doors are being opened for you, or both?
Both. I think I get a fair show of both, Taba. Opportunities, I think I would be selfish not to say that there's opportunities that has opened for me, and I'm grateful for that. There's a positive feedback. And sometimes you intimidate other people, because people, like I said, they would expect that you're a doctor who speak in this way, or there's a way that they have their own views about you, and then they find me, Koketjo, coming here, and I'm like, but why are we not so relaxed? So I'm receiving both. I'm having a fair share of both experiences.
Yeah, you remind me of when we had this thing of becoming a clinical psychologist, you thought like you'd hover above the earth, and then when you become one, you're like, but where's that thing that you guys were talking about? Psychologists are supposed to hover, and sound very interesting and intellectual. But any closing thoughts? Anything I didn't ask you that you thought you might have wanted to say?
I can't think of anything, Thabang, I'm grateful for the interaction. It was quite nice. I enjoyed. Nothing comes to my mind. Nothing comes to my mind. But I think also because it's based on a PhD, your theme is around PhD. I think to prospective and current PhD candidates is that I understand the journey of PhD can be quite too much, can be quite draining for one. But there's a need to rest, need to prioritize, because this becomes your baby. I'll take the words from Prof said, this is your baby. You'll rest until the day you actually get your final mark. And consult, peer review, consult, right? Because this is I don't want to say the only time you get this opportunity, but this is where you really, really establish and grasp more knowledge. Of course, you'll still build up to it, but it's a significant phase of any academic journey.
I just wanna thank you for the opportunity. I think you inspire me personally. I hope that there's more like you, because I hope people see what you do. I hope the doors that need to be opened, open, the opportunities that are presented to you. I hope the right ones, not just every opportunity, but the right ones that will help you become the person that you need to be. And we're rooting for you. And yeah, you make us proud, and thank you very much, and all the best with the journey.
Thank you so much, Thabang, and for the kind words. All the best. Keep well.